welcome to the LCARS Lounge, your front row seat to the design decks and creative cores of the Star Trek universe. This isn't just another Trek discussion. Here, I sit down with the minds behind the sets, screens, and starships to talk about how the future gets built, one frame, console, and bulkhead at a time. In this episode, I'm focusing on the stunning production design of Star Trek Picard, from the USS Stargazer through to the evolution of the Titan A, the understated realism of the SS Eleos, and of course the emotionally charged rebirth of the Enterprise D bridge. We're covering it all. I have got three insane guests who, some of my favorite humans on Earth. First guest up is the incredible Dave Blass, who literally set the stage for the most unforgettable visual moments. As production designer for season 2 and 3, Dave brought us the grandeur of the Stargazer, the layered evolution of the Titan A, and perhaps most memorably, the breathtaking return of the Enterprise D, with a deep reference to the Star Trek legacy and looking forward to the design sensibility. Dave helped redefine the 25th century Starfleet look and how it feels. Next up, we have Liz Kloczkowski, the art director, who expertise in vision helped breathe life into Star Trek's most iconic sets, from the warmth of Chateau Picard to the sleek corridors of the Titan A. Liz's work was central to Picard's visual storytelling. But perhaps most memorably, she played the leading role in the historic rebuild of the Enterprise D, one of the most ambitious and probably emotionally resonant set recreations in modern Star Trek history. Every curve, every light panel, and yes, even the famous carpet, it was brought back under her guidance because, well, let's be honest, it's not the Enterprise D unless your boots sink into the floor just a little bit. Rounding out our panel is Andrew Jarvis, the creative force behind the screens, quite literally. As playback graphic designer, Andrew and his team crafted Borg, Romulan, non-Federation, and LCARS interfaces, tactical displays, and on-screen data flows that gave their sets that real high-tech visual language. From La Sirena to Enterprise D, his work brought a sense of authenticity and continuity to every blinking panel and status readout. If you believe the consoles really work, he's the reason why. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the LCARS Lounge.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man.
So exciting. The gang is all here.
Have you guys, all three of you, been on done any kind of panel before?
We've never been in the same room together.
No.
I suppose, yeah, it's all remote, isn't it?
This is the first time I've seen what Andrew looks like, actually.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I don't think we've met in person, so.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah.
It's your face.
There we go.
I'm mostly, yeah.
So to kick things off, Star Trek really has a deep and recognizable visual identity. So just for the three of you, take it in turns. What was it like for each of you to step into that world that kind of helped shape the latest chapter?
Well, I would say insane, and just getting the opportunity to be there and to be on the bridge of. Again, I have mixed things, and other people will have different things. But it's like, for me, being on the bridge of a starship that I designed. I mean, is right up there, because people will say, "Oh, you were on the bridge of the Enterprise D," and I'm like, I was on the bridge of a starship that I designed, and it's like, after a lifetime of wanting to do that, to actually have it come to fruition and have Patrick Stewart be there, and then the cast, and to have everyone, that adventure happen on something that I designed, was just amazing, and to have the fans really react positively for the most part to our work, I think was good fun. But it was it was challenging because again, you feel the weight of the legacy of the show, and with everything we did, and I was lucky to have an amazing team to bring it apart.
I mean, I think it was the biggest thing I ever worked on. I know it's the biggest thing I ever worked on. So not only was it super cool just to be on, the $100 million project, but yeah, it's Star Trek. Like, it's everything Dave said and more. Like, I was like, you get the imposter syndrome a little bit, because you're like, are they going to know that I've never done this before? Like, am I supposed to be here? And then once you get into it and people like what you're doing, it's even that much more gratifying.
Yeah, it was definitely stressful. Like, you feel the weight of it. Like, when somebody says you're working on Star Trek, like you're tasked with designing an update at LCARS. Like, my first question was literally like, I found the email, like when we first heard that we would be working on Star Trek, I was like, is Michael Okuda involved? Like, wouldn't he be the one doing this? Like, it was a little like, yeah, imposter syndrome is a good way of putting it. Like, you're like, I'm not the one who should be doing this, but you know, you you push through that, and it really became a pleasure after a while to, I love making LCARS. Just like Data
I
loves
second
scanning
that.
for life forms, you know.
Well, and that was one of the unique things when I took over in season two was, I got introduced to Andrew and I saw his amazing Alcor work, and we both kind of said the same thing. It's like this, in season one they didn't really have any Federation starships,
Yeah.
so they got lucky, so they kind of dodged that thing. But it's like going into season two where we're on a starship, and we both kind of looked at each other like, why don't we have Mike Akuda here? I mean, we like it's that thing of going, it's like
Yeah.
that monkey painting where it was like, here's a classic painting, and then we're just like trying to fix it, and it ends up looking like a monkey, and it's like, no, why don't we just call Mike and have him help us? And it's like, but they hadn't reached out to him, and it was just that thing of going, well, let's
Right.
do the smart thing and get him in. He created this primer that we created, and Mike's amazing, but he's a 2D graphic designer
Yep.
that doesn't animate and things. So that's where Andrew's brilliance came in, and all the other artists, is they were able to take the basic constructs of what Mike was guiding us and turn and animate that and bring it to life.
Yeah, and they are incredible. Look,
And we had so much more that we were going to do. We had a lot of Andrew had done some great depth stuff where there was like the console would have more depth, and there would be like you press on it and then pull it up and do all this other stuff, and we just never had enough time to develop all the cool ideas that we came up with.
Yeah, it was like so fast. Like it was so packed. Like we early pre-production, I think I had a sense of like I thought I had more time than I did, you know. And then once you start shooting, it's like pretty seat of your pants.
Yeah. And I think also in the new era of Star Trek, they use displays more for storytelling than they used to. It became that thing of going, oh, we need to see the screen where it says blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that's where the guy turns and he goes, Captain, here's the information you need. And you don't need to look at it on the screen. Let the voice guy do the voice. But it was a lot of telling the screen the information on the screens, and that just became more difficult because, again, LCARS is designed as more of a graphic interface without a lot of text, without a lot of description, and we ended up having to find ways to make all that work. And they did some great rollout menus and pop-ups and things like that really worked out very well.
Those early concepts are really cool, and in some ways I wish the budget and the time would have allowed to kind of expand on those, because I think there would have been something quite special, but budgets and time are never on your side. So before we get too deep into that conversation, let's go to the first set that we see in season 2, which is the Stargazer, which made a huge impact right out of space dock. This wasn't just the same ship from Picard's early command days, but it carried the same name, and it needed to strike a perfect balance of honoring legacy whilst pushing Star Trek into the 25th century visual future. It set the tone for season 2, sleek, advanced, and filled with those subtle cues that said, yes, this is Starfleet. So, Dave, let's start right at the beginning. When designing a new Stargazer, how did you approach reinventing a legacy ship for a new era?
For me, we just did a deep dive on all the designs, and again at this point, I only had John Eves working with me, who was a legacy designer.
Yeah.
This is right before COVID hit, and I was working with John, and we were calling around, but everyone in the world was working at this time, as it was the world was incredibly busy as far as filmmaking goes. So we had John, and then we had a lot of other really talented designers, but no one who had years of experience with Star Trek. So I also reached out to the guys at Cryptic, who do the Star Trek Online game, and because in addition to the Stargazer, we had all these other fleet ships that we had to do. So we had to do quite a number at the same time, but it was mainly working with John Eves and kind of bashing out the idea of what it would be. And about then, COVID hit, and all the shows got shut down. And luckily for us, that freed up Doug Drexler, who was able to come over, and then it became more of a collaboration. So it would be John working in 2D, and then Doug working in 3D, and then all of us coming up with ideas. But I wanted to go with something a little bit more classic. I guess Terry Metalis and I have that vision of, whereas it's more of a classic original series vibe, and combined with that middle ground, because I think when TNG and was coming out, it was a mixture of that and the motion picture show. So you have the Reliant and the Miranda class ended up in TNG, and so I looked at the Miranda class quite a bit, because I thought that the original Stargazer was cool, but we understand, all of us, what it was. It was a kit bash of a bunch of things, and it looked cool for what it was, but it wasn't the prettiest ship. So it's like, okay, how do we do a 4 nacelle ship and have it be different? And then I did a deep dive, and it turned out that John had done a bunch of 4 nacelle ships for Discovery.
Yeah,
which was awesome and horrible, because he took a bunch of the great designs that I would want to do. I'm like, oh, well, what about, no, okay, they did that. Oh, the Europa's this. Oh, the Baran is this. Oh, and it's like, okay, well, and then you run into that thing where it's like, okay, I want to do this, but I can't do that because they did this. I want to do this, but I can't do this. And it's like, then you do something, it's like, okay, that's almost, with 4 nacelles, that kind of started looking like an X-Wing. And then you end up going in a lot of directions of not what I want to do, but what I don't, we can't do that. We can't do this. And so then we were going in that and came up with I think a really brilliant solution. And again, we had looked at the idea of going more, continuing on with the Enterprise E and how streamlined it was becoming, but it almost becomes like a space dart. And so we wanted to kind of back it off a little bit and go back to something a little bit more unique. And then we played around a lot with the shape of the hull, and how round is it, how oval is it, and how does that play out. But again, we had put so much thought into the different design aspects of where the hangar would go, where all the different things, and with the whole idea that this would play out a little bit in season 2, play out a lot in season 3, and unfortunately, our friend the Stargazer never got a chance to get explored in season 3.
No, which is a shame, because I would have loved to have seen more of the Stargazer, but
I explored it.
Yeah. All right, now need to make me jealous now. So Andrew, this is the first time really that we saw LCARS 2.0, as it were. There were some headaches. We know there were some headaches with LCARS on this set, but it felt sharp and layered. What direction did you take with making those graphics feel like an evolution and not just sort of like a retread?
So real quickly though, for season 1, even though we barely see it, I had done so much. Like, I just expected, like, every script. I was just like, here we go. There was actually, I don't know, I'm sure that the statute of limitations is out by now, that like there was a point where, how Rios used to be a Starfleet captain? Well, there was a flashback in one version of the script where we were on the bridge of his ship. As a flashback. And so, but every time I was just like, well, okay, when are we going to see it? So I just kept making it and making it and making it. I had so many like just kind of modules and GAC and layouts, and it hardly ever got used. So when it was time to go into the Stargazer, I had a lot to work from. And it was all kind of aimed at making it feel a little more serious, a little more stern. Picard himself is very stern and serious, and so I wanted to kind of like pare down the color palette to be really focused, and try to essentially just increase the density, reduce the color palette, and keep everything else the same. Like my coworkers are again going, well, that just looks like LCARS. And I'm like, exactly.
That's the idea. So, Dave, at what kind of point did you feel that the design kind of clicked and you kind of just sort of stood back and go, right, this is our Stargazer?
We went into a meeting with Alex Kurtzman with two different designs, and one of them was the one that we ended up with. And there was a concern of, whenever you're on TV shows or you're doing it on a soundstage, it's what's outside the window. And that became a big issue because they ran into that with La Serena, and La Serena had windows going all the way down the side that they ended up putting blast shields on at the last minute because it was too expensive to do all the green screen. So the question was, what's outside the window on the Stargazer? We had this great idea of one of the versions had you look out the back of the window of the observation lounge and you saw the back of the ship.
Yep.
So we were going to be able to go with a translite, like an old printed things, because you're actually just looking at the back of the ship. Sure, you'll get a little light coming in, but the view will be the back of the ship. And everyone thought that was pretty cool and would save money. And that was really it when Alex saw that and he's like, yeah, that'll save money. And we're like, okay, I guess that's what the Stargazer looks like. But the exterior of it was pretty. We were able to get to that fairly quickly, and we worked a lot with Terry Mentalis on that. The refinement. I mean, we went in a lot of the minutia. We probably had 20, 30 different designs of nacelles and things of that nature, and the upper area behind what you see outside the observation lounge. At one point was the hangar deck.
Yep.
But then, which was cool, it's like you still see little worker bees go in there, and then it became like, well, then we're gonna have to animate the worker bees and do that, and they're like, no, it's not the anim. So then we made that into the engineering room, so you see the warp cores in there, and so fun stuff. But again, it was one of those things that Igor Kuznevik, who did a lot of our previous stuff, he did this wonderful previs going through the ship that for me just watching that, it's just like, yeah. And we sent that out to Secret Hideout and to Paramount and everyone involved. And it's like, when you get no notes back, you nailed it. And it's like that one thing, we put the music in and it just goes through. I'm like, yeah, that feels like a Starfleet ship and a good mix of old and new, because part of the challenge was we a lot of our producers, directors, and folks, they were coming off of Discovery, which makes sense. And there was the Rick Berman era of Star Trek, and this is the Alex Kurtzman era. So we had a lot of those people. And when it came to it, it's like, well, here's how we do Star Trek. And it was much like it was done in the 90s. It's like, well, here's Rick Berman's era. Here's how we do Star Trek. So our Stargazer was never going to look like a 1990s version of Star Trek. The carpet, the thing, that just wasn't going to happen, because this was how, they would never have that on Discovery. And the folks are like, no, it's shiny, it's glossy, it's it's modern, it's not old, your grandma's Star Trek.
And carpet's expensive.
And it's space carpet, yes.
No, it's not.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that's that was not a battle I was going to win. In fact, it was more of a fight to, like, how much floor lighting do they want? And it was like a glowing. It looked like at one point we had a design. It was like the Saturday Night Fever floor with all this going on. I'm like, it's a little bit much, but yeah, I mean, when we finally got on it, it was just
the bridge.
But it's you get into that thing of going, okay, here's the design, and now you have to build it, and you're like, well, wow, how the building it becomes it's a cool little illustration and a piece of concept art. Now you get what is that thing in the background that's glowing and looks like a lighty, flashy thingy, and you end up having to build it, and how do you do that for a cost-effective way?
Yeah. So this is just an open question to the group. When you think about Starfleet design in the 25th century, how do you kind of define that aesthetic? What makes it feel like modern Star Trek to you?
Liz, go ahead.
No.
No. Well, So here is the thing. Modern Star Trek is really a challenge because, and again, this is one of the things that I wrestled with in designing the Stargazer, which is it is the first new ship that we've seen in 20 years.
Yep.
And which is kind of weird because you sit there going, no. They've been doing new Star Trek over the last 20 years. You're like, but nothing new. Everything since Nemesis has been old. Discovery is a flashback, and JJ is all flashback. So all of that stuff is older Star Trek, but it's more advanced looking, more polished, more of this. So there was really a challenge to how do I make new Star Trek look better than this old Star Trek without completely throwing away the design aesthetic. So that's why I kind of blended the two together in a way that I feel that it makes it feel like Star Trek. And I always use this analogy. An elevator 20 years ago doesn't look much different from an elevator today. A door from 20 years ago looks like a door. So if we have those wonderful, funky doors on the Enterprise D, why would a door look different now? So it wouldn't. So we start with that idea. It's like, here's a door, here's a turbo lift, here's a thing, and we kind of started expanding from there. And then when we got to the turbo lift or the transporter room, I'm like, well, yes, they've done some amazing stuff on Discovery and Strange New Worlds. I'm like, but I'm not in that world. I'm in TNG world, and this is what a transporter room looks like in our world. It just needs to be upgraded so that. And there was a lot of discussion. I think Liz, one of the fun moments is we had this discussion about the stairs and how much room there was on the transporter room and the pad and whatnot. And we built it pretty much exactly as it had been done. Because again, we were just like, it's a transporter room. They're going to upgrade the tech, but the basic structure would stay the same. Yeah. And everyone's like, well, no, they're going to trip on that little step and they're going to this. And they were very concerned about it until the cast got it. And they just went it and got in their places and did it. Because they're like, it looks like we've done this before, kids.
Yeah.
So. They didn't have, like, it was the 80s and 90s. Like, there's even the steepness of the ramp. Like, we wouldn't build anything really that steep now. But yeah, it's just going off of what Dave just said. Like, I had to study the Stargazer Titan in order to make other sets on the ship because they had already established kind of that vernacular. Like what Dave said with the doorways and the elevators and the turbo lifts and like all of that stuff is there. When you say up, like really, you're looking for what is upgraded, and it's like the textures are upgraded and the tech and the screens and the LCARS and like, yeah, Dave, shiny floors versus carpet and the more metallic versus beige, like those things. But because they had already kind of established that in the bridge, like doing other rooms there, like all those rooms are we're going to draw from the past, the historical sick bays and the transporter rooms and stuff like that. But we had to tie it to what they had just done for that bridge, so color palettes and all of those things. Like that's where the upgrade came in without going too far into something, coming up with something that was brand new. Like we weren't in there to do that.
And what Liz did was she took it from what I had done in season 2, and then even it made it more unique and more different. Pulling away from the Discovery design and adding in more of our own styles and everything. It wasn't as dark. It brightened it up, and again, I think for me my favorite sets on in season 3 are the transporter room and sickbay, because they just feel so next generation like. They feel like they stepped out of that, and I think it was a funny scene that we were in sickbay and we had at the end we had fleet formation, and we pulled all of our monitors from everywhere on the set and we put them all in, and Andrew had this giant display of every ship and fleet, and one of the producers, like, I'm pulling my hair out because I'm going, oh, but it did this, and I'm like texting and this, and Andrew's guys are like putting in the new shit, and they're like, why are you obsessing over all this? It's like their numbers on the screen. I'm like, dude, this is gonna be a thing. And people like, and they just could not understand. Like they're like, it was that thing like complete. Yeah. What are we talking about here? I don't understand. And then when that episode aired and they realized that everyone's sitting there zooming in on each name, each number, and that the class number had to match the class numbers of others, and that, the Luna class all has to be named after moons and this, and then, and they're like, oh, So
I think I
doing all
messaged
that,
both of you
in
after that
addition
episode
to
aired. Didn't
everything
I?
else we were doing.
I think I messaged both of you after that episode aired, going, "Do you have a list of all of those ships, just so I can go through and cross-reference them all?"
Yeah, but and that's what I was so proud of what Andrew and his team did, because I was, you know, had so many plates spinning, but then I'd look at a graphic and they will have pulled a little detail from the tech manual, the Mike Okuda's tech manual to add in for something. And I'm like, they get it. I don't have to. It was that thing where I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry about it. It's going to be cool. And we'll let the producers tweak it needs to do whatever, but I knew it would visually. And it's amazing when you have that group of people that in the same thing with Liz's design. It would never be like, oh, that's not right. It's like, oh, it could be this or might functional or whatever. But it's like the graphics were just so right. And then we would just like tweak the thing. But it was just you're starting from something amazing and then tweaking it to just work with the story and everything. So it was so much fun.
I love the Stargazer. It did set that foundation, and obviously I'm glad that the Titan was just a reuse of that bridge set, but expanded, and then the rest of the set kind of grew from there. So
Bridge module.
yes,
Bridge
I like
module,
this.
yes.
module, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because
yeah.
I had that ready to go when the episode dropped, and everyone,
Yeah.
I'm like, boom, bridge module. Here's the thing, and I had that tweet like planned out like for weeks.
I love when you said that. I was like, exactly, like because that's how it would work in universe. Mike, just to your original question, like the answer to like what is 25th century, like it's going to be as close to 24th as I'm allowed to make it, you know, like with the Serena. I mean, I love being in that position where I can just be a wild artist and just imagine big and go wherever my creativity takes me. And that's kind of what the Serena was. But if I actually have the honor of making something that is in the Federation universe in that realm, I want it to read as Federation, because that's what I'd want as a fan.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So let's talk Chateau Picard, because obviously we see Chateau Picard a fair amount in season 2 in various different stages of decay and life. So obviously, it's a very different kind of set. It's not a bridge, it's not in orbit, and it's technically somewhere we've briefly been to in the past, but it is, of course, the home of Jean-Luc Picard. And it has two radically different realities to it. On the one hand, you have that prime timeline, elegant, rustic, and kind of reflective. And then the Confederation timeline, where it's a little bit cold and a bit more militaristic, kind of terrifying, with various skulls on podiums as alien trophies and walls decorated with weapons. Let's start at the beginning then. So obviously, we know we're going to Chateau Picard. And I kind of envisioned it as almost like it's Two-Face from the Batman. You have one side which is very normal, and then you have one side that's a bit more twisted.
Well, it was oddly enough, it was actually 4 versions, because you have your normal version, your prime timeline Picard. Then you had your alternate version where you had the Borg Slayer.
Yeah.
Then you had Picard as a kid.
Yeah.
So that was the flashback version. And then you had your 2024 version, which was the dilapidated version. So, that was the problem, is that it had to bounce from one to another. You would think that they would do the thing where they go, oh, we're going to shoot it in one format and then go to the next and then but they would do that thing where like, oh, this episode they want a shot of this. And you're like, I don't have that. It's like it's now a decrepit, But yeah, so it was challenging, and also, so when we were designing that, we had another unique challenge, because they had established Chateau Picard in season 1, fairly extensively, and then you go even further where they established Chateau Picard in the episode Family.
Yep. And
you sit there and go, okay, completely different looks. So you're like, okay, so I have these two things. What do I do with them? So you're like, okay. So how do I blend the two of them together and then also play homage to, what we're trying to do? And that's really, because also they're like, oh, we want a big grand library. I'm like, well, what happened to the study? Oh, we don't want to go back to the study. We already went to the study too much last season. So now he's in a grand library. I'm like, okay, so now the study's over there. The kitchens that we saw before is over there, and we have a different new thing. And I think that Star Trek fans and people, fans in general, they get it. It's like they get the conceit of, oh, okay, this is a new thing for the season, and then the other stuff is somewhere else. But for me, it was trying to balance those two looks, the season one look and the family look, and then give the audience something new, and most importantly, create a space that would be usable and do everything we needed it to do for the season 3. So it was a unique challenge, to say the least.
So kind of an open question then. How much of the Confederation design leaded into kind of Star Trek's legacy details with like species and props and recognizable bones, for example?
Yeah. Well, when we first got the script, it was I think it was because the writers were working out of secret hideout, and they have a giant Klingon suit of armor in their lobby.
Oh.
From Discovery, the Klingon torchbearer, which Neville Page designed. And so they're like, well, yeah, he would have like suits of armor of all his enemies there, on display and things like that. And I'm like, okay. Did you ask Neville how much that cost and how long it took him? And it was kind of like that scene in the Michael Keaton Batman movie where he goes in and he has like, here's the Lord of the Wicker Man, all the armor and stuff like that. But then you ran to the thing. It's like, okay, one, the Klingon armor was ungodly expensive, so we would need to do Romulan and Cardassian and all that. So how do you do? What's the cost of doing all that and the time to do all that? And then they didn't like that, and then it was like, okay, well, what do we do? And then it was like, well, I'm like, well, if we're just making a point, let's make the point. It's like if you want to say he's a bad guy, well, it's like, okay, don't bring me a suit of armor, bring me
his head.
The head of my enemy on a pike. And they're like, ooh, we like that. I'm like, yes, skulls are cheaper. And Neville had done this great Gorn skull for Discovery. And I was like, well, we could do stuff like that. And then that, they liked that idea and it was cheaper. And then the idea of doing the weapons came from the movie Wall Street. And there's a scene where Michael Douglas is showing Charlie Sheen all his racks of guns, and it's more of like, here's the history. Again, these are all the weapons that I've taken from from enemies and things, but just that he would have a display of like guns, but not like a superhero movie where I'm gonna grab the gun off the wall and go shoot someone. It's more of a display. What does a warlord have as displays? It's like, oh, weapons and things like that, but historical stuff. So that was the idea on that.
Not like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where guns come out the oven on a rack, is it? It's
exactly, yeah. So I think it was like Watchmen or something. But you watch all these superhero shows, and they, John Wick opens the closet, and there's the racks of guns.
Yep. So, were there kind of any design elements or that kind of just made the Confederation version just feel wrong, as in almost unnervy?
Well, I just that a Vulcan head on a skull on a pike was pretty.
Yeah, is that not doing it for you, Mike?
Yeah. Well, we got into this whole thing like, okay, with the skull, and not because of Star Trek, we'd never seen a Vulcan skull, so it was like, would the skull be green, and if so, how green? And at one point it was like almost neon green. It was like, okay, too green. And then also there was a on below the skulls were like artifacts that were taken from each thing, and underneath the Vulcan one was the IDIC medallion and a Vulcan ear. So the Vulcan ear I thought was a little bit.
Oh, I don't remember seeing the Vulcan ear. I'm gonna have to go back and find that now. Obviously, after all of that, did you kind of feel different about Chateau Picard as kind of a character?
It was a challenge. Yes and no. I mean, it was like it never really. it was always one of those mysteries to me that I was never able to solve because it was that thing that over the history, how does this place exist and what's the hit? And I kept on trying to go deeper into the storytelling of it all, and then running into walls of different things and like, trying to build the history of the Picards and when they were there and what happened and when, and when was at one point we had, there was a hallway that we had some fire scorching from when, his brother and nephew were killed and this and how we do that. But then, in the end, you're servicing the script. So it's like, okay, so yes, Picard has a chateau, has a solarium boarded up in his house that he doesn't get rid of because his mom hung herself there, but he keeps it exactly as it is in case he ever wants to go in there and visit. And then his brother died there, his nephew died. A lot of death in Chateau Picard.
There is a lot of death, isn't there?
Let's think about it, but there it is. So it's one of those things that you wrangle and you kind of keep going through with it.
So let's move away from season 2. Let's come into season 3 and let's shift away from the kind of Starfleet precision and step into the shadows of the Eleos, the rescue ship that told us everything where Beverly had been without saying a word. With its rough-edged bridge, dim corridors, and that kind of eerie, isolated pod where we find Beverly, the Eleos sets a tone that felt more survivalist than sci-fi glamour. It was protective, worn, real, and at the heart of its execution was Liz, who brought that world to life. Liz, when you started working on the Eleos, what story did you want the sort of space itself to tell?
So Eleos was like, I think, my first set on season 3, and it was like one of the first ones to shoot too. So it was a lot of pressure on like getting it right, but then also it was so different that Dave and I were a little panicked because we're like, wow, we're really deviating from Starfleet. I'm like, is this an alien ship? Is it like, how different are we going? And they're like, no, it's Starfleet. And we're like, oh, okay. But it's so strange and it's so old, and like the room is just a square and bridges are usually, circular. So we had a lot of like boxes, square holes to fill. So it was definitely
square holes. There you go.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it was a lot of that, like panicking, being like and for me too, it was my first project for Dave, like spearheading. So getting it right and putting all of the Star Trek stuff in there. I mean, yeah, we were doing Easter eggs and Beverly isms and all of her stuff, but we were also converting a set that it wasn't a fresh build. That we were converting Soong's lab from season 2. And Soong's lab was like a rectangular concrete basement. And so when Dave came into my office and he was like, hey, so this is what you have to work with. I'm like, fuck, man. Like,
it's funny. I looked back on it and going, because when we're designing Soong's lab, it was like we had all the time and all the money in the world. And like, it never occurred to me. And it was just like, it was a stupid mistake on my part that it's like, whatever box you build first, that's the box you turn into everything else. And I would never have built that design had I thought that was going to then define that's so many sets for the next thing. I was like, because there was 2 levels, it was this, I was like, oh my God. But we ended up doing a great job with it. And I thought that Liz just did a phenomenal job with the Eleos. But yeah, that was not my best moment.
So what you're saying is
we made it work.
Yeah.
Sorry,
next time you're going to make a round set that you can put a square in if you need to.
Yes.
But we got away with it because it was an older ship. Like we hadn't really seen a lot of like 100-year-old, 50 to 100-year-old ships. I mean, with the references we had were the Raven from Voyager. Like that's kind of those LCARS colors. That's where that came from. And then the only other ship like future Beverly would be riding around in was the Pasteur. And so we had looked at that and we were like, we took some visual cues like from their view screen because that was a new build. So anything new that we were building, we knew that was going to be, bringing in more Federation like architecture. So like the shape of the view screen, some of the doors, even we had to put panels on the walls to try to make it feel more shippy and less concrete. And so those are John Eves specials. So John Eves just drew a whole bunch of different rectangles and we ended up vacuum forming, or actually we just CNC'd them But anything we added that those were choices that we had to be specific about. And then we were kind of a little restricted by the square and then the staircase and the hallway. Like, we were kind of stuck with all of that. But while I was doing, converting the set over, Dave was working with all the digital guys. And so he had an overlay done of the ship that they were working on that John had drawn that had a round bridge on the top.
Yep.
He just like squarified it. And so that they had overlaid, and they're like, all right, we'll match the digital VFX shots. We'll match, your rectangular squarish bridge. So those were things I was stressing about. And then we had to wait like a year and a half, almost 2 years to see it finally on screen, because season 2 had aired first and then season 3 had aired. So there was some time there. And so fingers crossed that people weren't going to be mad at what we had done. And so we were just so lucky that everybody really liked it. So it had that vintage feel and the grittiness and all of that without being like, this feels wrong. Like we got to kind of create something new and be creative with it.
Yeah.
That vintage feel. Oh, sorry, Mike.
No, go on.
That vintage feel. I mean, this is where I give so many props to Dave. Like just bringing in so much of the old guard. Like Alan Kobayashi worked on. Like there was some stuff, and he's from the Berman era. Jeffrey Mandel from the Berman era. Obviously we had Okuda. And so that was like, of all the ships and all the stuff we were working on at that time. I mean, I was doing stuff for the Titan and for Romulan stuff. There was a lot on my plate at that moment, and Shrike, and I was just like, okay, maybe the Eleos is something I can just touch as little as possible, because like Jeffrey Mandel would send me like vector packs from the actual old days, because these were the guys who worked there. Like they knew where the bodies were buried, and they could actually send me like OG, like the actual vector files from the Berman era that I'd have to like find some weird program to convert, because they weren't even like, modern Illustrator. And so just actually getting to play with those original graphics was really fun. They were a mixture. I mean, we definitely still had to animate things and tell the story and create, sensor scan readouts. But that was one of my favorite parts of working, on season 3 was the Eleos, because it was all so OG, and that couldn't have happened if Dave hadn't brought everybody back the way he did.
And dude, I forgot Alan was in there doing all the crates.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Crate, Alan touched and put a sticker up, Ferengi stickers on, or what? Yeah, that was. I think we brought Alan in on that one.
Yeah, he was doing that, and he was also doing the District 6 at the time. And we also brought back another member of the TNG era, and that would be the space crate, as it was called.
Lots of space.
And that had been missing. And in season 2, when we were doing the Stargazer, I had gone to my team. I'm like, okay, here's what I need. I need this. And everyone's like, yeah, I remember that from a prop house from the 90s. It doesn't exist anymore. We called the prop house. They don't have anymore. I'm like, okay, but it wasn't made at the prop house. It wasn't a thing. It was a thing before it was a thing, and no one could find it. And it was like, I'm like, but this is Star Trek. This is like the thing. And no one. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay, well, give me something like this. Couldn't find it. So then Liz comes in, and like 2 hours later, I'm like, here, find this. This is what I want. And she comes back later like, oh, here it is. I'm like, wait, that's not possible. That was 2 hours.
I was told you couldn't do this.
Yeah, I'm like, okay. And she's like, yeah, it's just freezer pallets. I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, but how expensive are they? She's like, they're $40. I'm like, buy them all.
I want the entire US supply of freezer pallets.
Yeah. I have a guy. You need a guy. I've got the guy.
Does he work at Amazon by chance?
What was crazy is that the cinematographer's like, ooh, I don't know about that. It made more ray. We're going to have to do a camera test and see what it looks like on camera. I'm like, okay, just go watch Star Trek. It's like in every shot. They make a desk out of it, and then they cut it into this. And it's like, here's episodes where it's something. It's a wall. It's a ceiling. It's a floor.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's everywhere in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Space plastic.
Yeah.
Well, look, it's only Star Trek if it's got rubble on the bridge and space crate.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't Star Trek unless there's rocks on the bridge somehow.
Well, at least Blass's space rubble is a little more believable. It's not rocks.
Yes. I remember I'm doing a rewatch of TNG, and I was watching an episode the other day, and there's literally boulders on the bridge, and I'm thinking, hang on, the ship's made of metal, and where are rocks coming from?
Yeah. Well, but I actually had it happen. We went and made all this stuff, and they did a shot, and I'm like looking at the monitor, and rocks flying through the thing, and I'm like, go to the specs guys. I'm like, what are you doing there? Well, look, it's cork. It's this, and I'm like, yeah, I know. I've seen Star Trek in the '90s. That's why there's rocks in space. It's cork. I know what it is. I just don't know why it's here on my set when I made all this cool stuff for you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize. I'm like,
like ship hull. It's that's what would be exploding.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is more for Liz, but what is the one detail that you are most proud of on the Eleos set?
Oh, there's a lot in there. I mean, probably maybe the hex barrels, like the stuff that we built and the reason I'm proud of it is because they were like a bunch of, to get something built, you had to go through this whole approval process. And so like Dave was off doing bigger things with Terry and producers, but I needed Dave to sign off, and I needed Mark to sign off, and I needed a set designer to draw this thing. And I just needed a whole bunch of hex barrels. So I had just done a little sketch of it and given it to the lead man and was like, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking of, but like, can you go through this approval process? And he was like, yeah, I'll take care of it. And so he didn't do any of that. He just took it straight to special effects, my drawing. And so like, and I'm not supposed to draw stuff. Like it's like there's rules. So it's, it's someone else's job. Yeah. And I didn't draw it saying, hey, build this. I had just done a little sketch. So whatever, it left. And so maybe I was like, oh, I'm going to be in so much trouble. But he had taken it to special effects, and they just built like 40 of them. And so by the time it had come out, that like Mark was like, who authorized this? And I was like, not me. And that wasn't my intention, was to secretly build it. But then when they all got built, I was like, yeah, now we have all these hex barrels and we can use them everywhere. So we like blew them up in the Eleos. We had them in stacks in the background. They're kind of hard to see in the hallway because it's a little dim, but they're there. So yeah, maybe that was my most like my sneakiest thing I did, that I was, because those are like next gen era too.
Yeah.
That's not like, that's anything we put in there that was right, that felt good. But even just converting it and making it feel believable. And like, I think Terry posted a little close. He was doing like on Twitter, he was doing secretive posts with no context. He had done something of the little buttons the practical buttons we had made. Yep. And everyone, like the whole Twitter feed, everyone, like went crazy. And I was like, oh, is that a good crazy or a bad crazy? Like everyone was speculating, what are these things? They were just like little pieces of acrylic I had hot glued to the, it's not my best work either, but that all of those things, that we've just had fun with it.
Well, it's funny, actually. One of those secretive posts with no context is where my Star Trek journey began. It was recreating one of those random photos.
Oh, yeah.
He posted up maybe 3 years
ago. I know
the
now. One.
Yep. Yeah. And it was that snowballed it. Because if I hadn't started that, then I wouldn't be on the podcast. So it's that whole kind of snowball effect. Mm-hmm. So let's keep on with small sets for a minute. And let's talk about, I'm going to say, probably one of the most inventive uses of space in Picard Season 3, and that's how the team transformed a single multi-level structure into not one, but two unforgettable ships, the La Sirena and the Shrike. While fans saw two very different vessels on screen, in reality, they shared the same footprint, near enough. The Shrike, the eerie industrial command center that was built on the lower level of the La Sirena set, turning one production space into two layered storytelling environments. And you never know. So, open question then, was that a necessity? As in, you were forced to do that because you needed another set and that was the only space that was available?
No, that was a dream, and I had thought about that all my whole life. I said, this is when I, do a bridge of a alien starship, this is what it's going to be. No, Terry had basically said, here's the deal. We're not going to be on the bridge of the Shrike. It's just going to be a view screen shot. So we're going to be on the Titan, and then you cut to the view screen. So it's just going to be there and we see Amanda Plummer. She delivers her line, so we need like a background or something like that. And then Amanda Plummer came in and she does Vatic. And Terry's like, Dave, we're gonna need a ship. And I'm like, good, we don't want to have a ship. I go, I need room, I need money, I need time. I don't have any, there's like production triangle. I need good, fast, and cheap. I'm like, I can't build a triangle. I have nothing. And he's like, well, if it was easy, I would have hired someone else. I'm like, fun. And that was it. It was like, I'm like, I need money to build the Enterprise D. I need money for all this stuff. I need space. And we only had the stages that we had. There was nowhere else to build them in. We were maxed out. We had all the Titan stuff on one stage. We had the 10 forward bar, and we had, I think at this point we had it was Eleos moving into Daystrom station.
Oh,
so there was no room or anything. It was just like, and there wasn't, and this is also in the middle of COVID. There was no opportunity, like there's no other stage. So it was like, here, figure it out. And I literally was wandering around the stage going, what if I this, what if I that? And we also had scenes with Raffi and Worf. And because we had no place to play those scenes, we had those scenes playing, Terry, incredibly smart. He adapted everything. It was like I used every piece of the buffalo. It's like, and I think it's that thing that I appreciate Star Trek fans, because the whole reuse of the 10 forward bar in that season was so brilliantly done, because it says, here's what it is, here's the reason it is. And everyone's like, okay. We understand this on so many levels, and you're going to reuse the set that you already have and save a bunch of money. But you sold it and you buy it and it makes sense. So we're all on board. So, I'm like, okay, we're reusing La Serena. And I'm like, but we never, I think there was probably 2 scenes in season 1 where they're downstairs in La Serena. So it's this massive space.
So underused.
That never get used. And it's like that set was just never exploited. Hardly at all. So I'm like sitting there going, okay, here's my, every time you start a new show, you look at the empty soundstage and you're like, here's my canvas. I'm like, okay, here's my canvas. What do I do? And then I just went from them like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We have $60 and we got to make this look different. So I always use the term, we're going to paint with a bigger brush. So we're going to cut these little panels out. That's going to be, $200 there, and then we're going to paint everything copper, and we're going to do this, and then I used crinkled up window screen that you then uplight, and it gives it this kind of weird, thing that was in the back windows, and I'm like, okay, so this is as cheap as you could possibly do things. And then I went and we were striking Eleos, and I took all the pieces, the console, the main console from the Shrike is exactly the console from the Eleos. It just went here, painted it gold. And the monitors that are on the side of that also pulled exactly from Eleos, slapped onto the side of La Serena, and go, okay, those go there, this goes here. Take the chairs from upstairs in La Serena, use them down here, and there you go. That's all you get. And the only custom thing was the chair, which I worked with Amanda, and she was just probably one of the best experiences was getting to work with her and talk with her, because she's such a amazing individual. And it's like she walks into the room with this weight of the era, and she was just like, my father had it, when the way he would spin in his chair, and I want to do something like that. I want to make this chair part of my character.
Unleash the dogs of war.
Yeah.
I love
And
that
just
scene.
to have, because she was like, maybe I want to sit on it like this, and I want to have some space and she goes, I really want to make this chair part of my thing. And I'm like, oh, anything you want. And it's just, and I would send her little notes and things, and is this what, and just to see her, and then she gets there and she delivers her performance, and I'm just like, okay, yeah.
Really?
So yeah, and that was also, I worked with our cinematographer Crescenzo, and I said, okay, so how a lot of times we're really dark and really we don't see much. This is a good set for that. I don't want to, but if you could, we pump some light through those, those panels that I did, and it will make it look all weird and alien-like. And it's a mathematical pattern called a Voronoi that created those shapes. So we did that, and we had them printed on. But yeah, fill it full of smoke and backlight it and make it look mean. And they did a great job with that.
And then, of course, there are the incredible playback graphics, which I think just elevate that set, that make it feel even more alien. I think I've just clicked the wrong button and gone back page. Hang on, bear with me 1 second. I did. There we go. So obviously the Shrike's UI is very different. It's cool blues, it's golds, it's organic, it flows. Where did your inspiration come for that?
Well, that started with Akuda. I remember the very first discussions of it. He had done a quick pass at it. Obviously, it starts with the founder's language that we see in Deep Space Nine. But they didn't, we didn't want to like hit that on the head too much because it's kind of a secret, So then Jeffrey Mandel did some stuff. We were passing things back and forth, and it seemed like it was pretty much done. Like it seemed it was like, "Ooh, okay, this is one I don't need to spend too much time on." And then, like, I remember one night, like it was the night before we shot it. Okuda literally called me. It was the only time he called me during the run of the show, and he was like, all right, we're getting word that like it needs to look more organic. It needs to look more alien and cool. And so I stayed up literally that whole night, just like doing graphics, doing like just making it look more organic and alien-y,
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I was really happy with what came out.
Yeah, we had done this thing where it was more floating, blobby types of
Yeah.
things.
Lava lampy.
Yeah, exactly. And it was that thing of going, okay, is that where you could like grab a goo of lava lamp and do it? But it was like also that thing of going, is that gonna at some point you get too weird that it doesn't actually look like an interface, it looks like a
Right.
screensaver. And so I think Andrew's final version with Mike and everything really has a great feel to it, and it does what you need. And again, I don't think that in that instance, there's not a lot of
You never
detail.
see it.
You don't see it, and it's even worse because they did the Art of Picard book,
I
and
know.
the two shots that they have on the Art of Picard book
Yeah.
have the screens off, and I'm like
Oh.
sitting there like
It's
I'm like,
Yeah.
and they have
it's the
two
Mac
photos
Mini.
next to each.
It's just one of the
Yeah.
Mac Mini screens. It says Star Trek Picard playback on it, and it's just like,
Yeah, I'm just like, why would you do that? I have really nice
Well,
photos.
and the version that ends up in the credits at the end is really like a couple versions back
Yeah.
from the final version too. So
Yeah.
it's fine.
so
But again, what I think was important is that everyone was doing the thing without without me having to go, okay, here, do this,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I have to go back to the final.
Yeah.
Everyone knew the marching orders, and everyone would be going on, and again, that was the I would say the brilliance of whoever was the production designer on the show. Oh, that was me. It was a joke. But it was just like hiring people who knew what they were doing. It's like I didn't have to explain to Jeffrey Mandel the Orion language. It's like I'm like, how do people like it was that thing for me. It's like hire the right people. Hire the people who know what they're doing. And it's just and Jeffrey would just go into his thing and go, oh yeah, this is what we used on Enterprise in this market that we did. And you're talking to Mike Okuda, and it's like Mike's knows more about Star Trek than anyone in the galaxy. And was like, of course, and then you would have that conversation. But also then when the producers, they're like, what, we're gonna give Mike Okuda notes on what things should look. And Terry would, because Terry, I think, was on the same plane because he's not giving like, oh, this doesn't look good. He's like, okay, I'm trying to get it to do this thing and whatever. And we all Terry was such a great leader like that. He wasn't like saying like it wasn't an arbitrary thing. It was like he's like, I'm trying to do this thing. You get where I'm going, and we're all like, yeah. And
Can I use this opportunity to ask you a question, Dave? Because like I heard, so like season one. I mean, all due respect to the entire team season one, but almost everyone who was there season one was changed over for seasons 2 and 3. Like it was a whole new team of people, really, and it felt to me like from here in Chicago where I'm making graphics, like it didn't seem as Star Trek-y. And I remember like our coordinator Casey told me something that you had said, and I just heard it secondhand. So I'd be interested to hear it from you. That there was like a speech that you gave early on that was like, we're doing this Star Trek. Like, we're doing this so it feels like Star Trek. If you go to Risa, it should look like Risa. If we see this, it should. If you see anything that we know from Star Trek, it should feel like we remember it. Like, what was that real? Do you remember this?
Oh yeah, no, I remember. It's like, and I've said that since, and again, it's that thing of going, I want to make Star Trek look like Star Trek, and again, it's that thing of going, I created this thing where it's like Star Trek is not a fantasy thing; it's a historical story that takes place in space with 50 years of history. And I think that's one of the things that the franchise has lost is that, we're going to reboot. It's like, I think that Star Wars has done that better in as much as, if you watch The Mandalorian, if you watch Andor, it feels like it's still in the same world. There is no, even though the world has evolved from Rogue One, Andor feels like it's in the same exact world. There was no difference.
It's analog, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, and that was for me. I'm like, I don't want to put my stamp on Star Trek. I want to, the stamp has been made. I just want to maintain the continuity of design so that when we're watching it, it feels like we're in the same places, and it can look more modern and everything, the same way that our world is more modern with computers and things like that. And if you went back 20 years, and then you envision what the future would like, we could do that. But it's like, it should just look like Star Trek and not have to feel like we're trying to do something generic sci-fi. And again, I think that everyone who worked on season 1 did an amazing job. But I'm like, I want it to feel more like Star Trek, not like
if it ain't broke,
he was like,
fix it.
in the in front of like a car sales place where there's that like thing that does this. That was Dave. That was Dave every day. Like, does this look like Star Trek? Are you watching Star Trek? Like that speech. that was Dave. Yeah. So,
were you there for one of the speeches?
Yeah, well, every day in my office. Like,
nice.
Watch. I need you to watch this episode tonight, Liz. This is going to be tomorrow's. What we're going to talk about tomorrow. Like, if I show him something, where did you get this from? What episodes? Is this the sensor cluster from Deep Space Nine? Where is that from? Or the other thing he was adamant about was making stuff out of found objects, because that's what Star Trek did a lot of. And Discovery does a good job with that too. But like, he's like, these are sync strainers. Look at how cool these things look on the wall, and they're sync strainers. Like, I need stuff made out of sync strainers. Like whatever. Like that, pushing all of us to have that type of creativity, but to stick to that. Like, yeah, Star Trek should look like Star Trek. What is that thing? Is that Star Trek? And then sometimes too, it's like, well, we found these chairs that are Star Trek, but they were from Star Trek Discovery, the year 3000. And he was like, we might not want to use those because the other shows are using it. So really paying attention to all that stuff. Like, it's like a runaway train a lot of times, because everyone's got their job, and it's up to him to make sure that everything's cohesive and that we're not, making some glaring mistakes. So Dave was exceptionally good at that.
So I want to talk briefly before we go into, I'm going to call it my favorite set, but we're going to talk about my second favorite set, which is the Titan. 3 guesses to what my favorite set is. Obviously, at this point, we've seen lots of ships across Star Trek, across all of Star Trek, but few have felt kind of physically complete. The Titan does an incredible job of feeling complete, and it wasn't just a bridge and a few corridors. It was a full environment, from sick bay, shuttle bay, shuttles I should say, crew quarters, cloaking device tucked deep in the ship's belly. The Titan wasn't just a set, it was an entire world, and the work that went into building it was, well, nothing short of stellar. Now, Liz, obviously you worked a lot on the transporter room and on sick bay. How do you take something that is pretty well established, like a transporter room, and then go, right, we're going to update it because we're 50 years ahead, but still keep it grounded?
Well, that one, the floor plan of the transporter room was the floor plan of old OG transporter room. There's the size-wise, it's not 1 inch bigger. And I think that was really Dave had come up with a plan. He had been doing designs, like bigger transporter room designs for a minute, like, oh, how much bigger are we going to do it? What's going to look like next gen? What's going to look like this? So he had come to me with a pack of drawings, like it's going to look like this. And then it was up to me to just like find better materials, or even not even just better materials, but how do we tie it to the Titan bridge? How do we make it feel like it's another room on the ship? So that's kind of where I came in, was like taking that the next step after all that design sizes and drawings and all that was Dave and James Addink, the set designer. But like the graphics in the like around the ring, and then the little side guys, like those were like just sound baffling. Like you can kind of really tell what that is. So we were like, oh, okay, well, what if we put a new material? I'm like, Dave really likes hexagons, so if I put a hexagon on anything, he'd be like, yeah, I like that, it's good.
Yeah, you like hexagons, Dave, I'll give you that one.
Yeah. So I had a couple of, as an art director, you've got like samples everywhere, so I had a bunch of different samples of hexagons, and I said, what about these? He's like, yeah, those will work. And then the palette, the question was like, are we going to stick with more of like the dark grays that were on the bridge, or like the sick bay we had developed in that same kind of metallic palette, but like a lot lighter? So I'm like, and then the crew quarters actually was a blend of the two. So it was warmer, more browns, but like still shades of gray. So for transporter room, we had to just figure out, what does Dave want for that? And he was like, it's going to be dark gray. Like the engineering is going to have kind of more like similar to the bridge. So we just develop all of those things, the textures, colors, materials, graphics, shiny things. Like the graphics too, they came up with something, it wasn't exactly like next gen, but it still had that orange to it, but not, I think that was a Mandel special, but it's like upgrading it, but without making it too different. So he had done a whole bunch of ideas, and we printed a couple of things full size and really looked at it with our eyes. And then the little moire film behind it, we had to find the right. Some of the stuff is a little kooky and like it's really swirly. So, samples until we find stuff that looks. So for me, it's about making, if nothing is glaring at you and you don't notice anything, then I've done my job, because it just feels believable and everything is right. Like it's that meticulous, like all the details, but the actual footprint, even into that little room with all the phasers, like they had already redesigned a phaser bay that went in the hallway. So we had that in there, and there was a little like the little bank where all the transporter tech is.
Yep.
But like the transporter station where the person operates it, we're like, are we going to design that? And Dave was like, nope, we've got those that are stations, with a clear screen.
Yep.
And we had like 5 of those. So, I just had to steal one of those every time we went into the transporter room. I think the one from the sick bay is just right up the road. So we would just move it right around the corner. So we would just move that in there. That, that's already updated tech.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we went about it. But yeah, the room, I would have made it bigger if there was more money, just for shooting, just for like, it could have been a little bigger.
But again, I think the brilliance of Liz is what you don't see is that transporter room then became so many other things as well. The transporter room was also the nacelle control panel, was the the EPS room, and then what was the other one, Liz?
Nacelle room, EPS room, environmental. Environmental.
Yep.
Yeah. So it basically, there was a wall that went in front of the pad, and we just changed it around, and we came up with quick and easy ways to do things. And that's really at the heart of television and Star Trek production, is turning one thing into another, and doing it in such a way that the audience doesn't notice it. And we had designs to keep building. I had this John worked with John Eves designing this multi-purpose room that was going to be, crew quarters and a bar and a thing. And it's like we had all these grand ideas, and it's like in the end we had one room that we just kept on turning over and over and over and over, and but you don't notice it. And that's the great thing is, you go into the room and it works great. And especially the nacelle room with the great table, and Liz worked with Todd Stash work underneath it and giving him lessons, watching her, okay, Todd, this is what you do. You plug these things, and, Todd with the little creeper cart. And it was just, it was so much fun to watch all the departments come together and get excited about something.
Were there any plans to build an engineering at some point, even in the early days?
Not really. That was one set that never popped up on anything.
I'd love to see a warp core, that's all.
No, I think maybe out of fear, it never really came about. And I think it was one of those things that they're like, but also, when you get into it, it's like, well, who's the engineer on the ship? It's like we
Right.
to that on the, I always laugh on the Stargazer. It's like, the first officer on the Stargazer, he's still, on Rise, like, recovering from a hangover. Because if you think about it, it's like, wait, so they ran into this problem, and then it's like, oh, you got Girardi, you got Picard, you got all these people. It's like, who is there anyone from the
Who works here?
other than Rios? It's like you have the three chairs, because we talked about that. It's like, oh, you have the three chairs. It's like, okay, so we got no counselor and you got no first officer. Rios is just like, fuck it, man. I'm good.
Yeah.
Obviously, Andrew, the Titan was alive with screens and graphics, both on bridge and in different rooms and everything else. How did you maintain consistency across all of it?
Oh wow. Well, yeah, a big team, everybody at Twisted Media. Noah Schloss was really like doing just as much work as me. You know, uh, we had a lot of pre-animated GAC modules, and so a lot of it was like you would come up with a consistent way of, like, for example, those notifications, right?
Yep.
That was like Dave's saying, like there was a lot of storytelling that was happening. You get an incoming transmission or some kind of story point. And so I wanted to make sure every department I went back to the logos that were designed for like Star Trek Motion Picture 1979, Rick Sternbach and Lee Cole, and their work just doing like defining each department logo. And I tried to like reintroduce those because you don't see like the classic like engineering logo and sciences.
Yep.
You don't see that in the Berman era. Aku just said like, well, he didn't want to make a logo for every department because he said, I asked him once, I was like, why aren't there department logos in the 24th century? And he's like, well, if you set up that you're going to do that for every department, then it's never ending. Like you'll just have to. I was like, all right, we're bringing him back. So we try to create these consistent, visual language of how things were presented. So if it was like an engineering related issue, like it would have that symbol. And so all those kind of pre-animated GAC modules, like I say GAC, it just means like, little graphical widgets, just to add visual interest and density. And so we would do the compositions and lay out the overall composition of the screen, and then just fill it with all those little widgets so that there was a lot of density, a lot of visual interest throughout. Yeah.
No. Yeah, and one of the things in season 2 or season 3 that what threw a monkey wrench into is that they changed. And again, I don't know why or how or whatever, but they changed like what was what. So it wasn't con and ops. It was and tactical. And it was like,
that kept going back and forth. I remember Casey had a map of what all the bridge stations were, and it was changing on like a weekly basis.
Yeah. and it's one of those things that it's like you're doing your thing in your head going, okay, I understand what they're asking for. How do I logic it to make it make sense? And it's like, okay, you're like, well, every console can, according to Star Trek lore, every console can do anything it wants.
Well, right. Well, I remember like there was a pretty complicated, like really like some of the stuff we were doing on these screens are really visual effects that were then played back as screens on it. So it was like there was really like something going on. I think it was when Girardi was like boring through the shield.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where like during the shoot, the blocking changed, and it went from shooting on one side to the other, and we didn't realize, like, I don't know, like obviously if you think about it, you should know that like if you change bays, now it's no longer on tactical, right? But there was a symbol that we were using on that screen. I bet you remember what I'm talking about. That was on Chekhov's screen in, I think it was like Star Trek 2 or 3. Yeah, I think it was on 2. Yeah. And it was a very specific tactical symbol. And when we moved that graphic and it was a big hero graphic that had taken weeks to design, and you said on the day, oh wait, it's not here, it's there. And so we moved it, and you're like, why? It's the tactical symbol on the science bay. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And that was every day. That was stuff like that was happening every day.
I was actually surprised that you guys could move stuff on the day, though, because like Mike Akuda was like, once we printed something, if they wanted to change something, they would just change it in post. Like this, like I remember the director asking, like, "Hey, I don't like this here. I want it over there," and I was like, "Sucks to be you." And then you guys were like, "Yeah. Well, it'll be done in 10 minutes."
I think we should have said no more.
No, but that, a lot of that though, like 10, 15 minutes, reanimated, re-rendered out, re-sent to the guy, downloaded, uploaded back up while they're rehearsing. I was like, that was news. I didn't know that was not possible. So yeah,
it was barely possible, but we made it
all
work.
the things you could have done, Liz, knowing that.
You're right. Well, it was like Andrew said, it was every day, and a lot of times I'll be calling them because I'll get a call like, "Hey, we don't like this," or is it the actors are looking this direction instead, or this is all changed, and I'd be like, how much time, I'll delay if we can, but
yeah. I mean, you'd always try to work with us, but Yeah.
So let's talk about the bridge. Not just any bridge, the bridge. I'm now dubbing it as. Creating the Enterprise D wasn't just nostalgia. It was about honoring the legacy of the next generation and giving both cast and the audience a moment they thought they'd never see again. The team didn't just rebuild a set, they rebuilt a memory and made it real. So, Liz, what went through your head when you were told, you've got to rebuild the Enterprise D?
Well, first, I wasn't the one who was going to rebuild it. We didn't know who was going to do it. So I just saw that as a hungry opportunity where David had already given me a bunch of sets that I had no business working on. And so when we had heard that the D was coming back pretty early on, like the competitive side of me was like, who's getting it? And how do I get it? So I definitely was like on Dave's heels, like, hey, hi.
I'm here.
I watch Star Trek, it's like he led me on for a little bit, not knowing who he was going to give it to, but I guess Dave could answer more about why me, but I knew it was going to be a big thing, and I knew it, like I knew I could do a good job with it, and I knew like if given the chance. And a lot of times too, people don't, once the end product of a set, it's not like, oh, this is what I wanted the whole time. It very rarely is that. Like stuff changes, money changes, and materials change, and the story changes stuff. And so by the time you get a finished set, it's not what you were expecting. And so the D we had to treat like a wedding, or like Crazy Bridezilla. This is so important on the day. This has to look like this. It can't look like anything else. It has to look like exactly what we want.
Yeah.
And we don't always get that. Though it'll be like, hey, there's not enough money. You've got to lose this door. Like those are the types of discussions that we'll have. And lucky for me, like between Dave and Terry, they were like, just give Liz whatever she wants. She knows she's got all the research. Like if she says it needs to be this way, it needs to be that way, and not like too Bridezilla, and not like, too crazy, but definitely like, no, that won't work. This will work. And people really respected that, and they knew how important it was. So if I'm like, hey, that's not quite the right color, or, oh, we've got to redo this. This is actually wrong. And now I have the right information. The guys were really good about being like, okay, yeah, we'll make that happen, because we know that this is going to be, people are going to, it's extra scrutiny, but how important it is. So that it's more of a museum thing and less of a set.
Yeah.
And everyone was kind of on board with that. So that's really why it was so successful. Like one person could just say, hey, this is wrong and we don't care, like live with it. And nobody was really like that. So that's really why we got away with it.
So we have to talk carpet. I'm guessing there was never any doubt that the carpet was coming back. Was there any point going, did you at any point go, well, look, we're never going to get it quite right. Do we modernize it slightly because of what happened in the story? Or was it always a case of, no, the carpet is coming back, we will get the carpet, it's always going to be there?
Well, everything was like that. Like the paint color on the wall, like every material, the graphics, everything had to be the same. So the understanding was, yeah, they'll just find the right stuff, and that's that. So the only reason the carpets like become this whole saga is because the red was a little bit harder to find.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like it's carpet. Like you find carpet catalogs and you pick out a carpet, and like that's how simple it is. But that Berber that they used in the 80s had that specific dot, and because we're matching something, like we match everything else. If that was going to be different, or like if you chose something that was too red, or like, oh yeah, we'll just, like you said, modernize it. Like that was never it was always needed to be that. And so when it was time to order it and I didn't have the right thing selected, because that's my job, is to like find options, look at it with Dave, we make some choices, and then, give it to the guys to order. So the day to order was coming and we didn't have it. And that's kind of where it was dramatic. Like I was a little stressed because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to order. And if I order something that looks like caca, like everything we did is for nothing, because it's not going to look right.
Or and it's not like same Star Trek fans are picky or anything.
Right. No, but I had the same feelings like on the Eleos, where I was like, are they going to like this? Or we're starting to make choices. And then you make a choice and you're like, is this the right choice? Or are people going to like this? So it's the same thing with the D. It's just like, I had two different carpets. One was a little browner than the other because it looked more like the SD, versus in real life, it was it's like a bright burgundy, but it's not red carpet red. Like whatever they had at Universal, you can't air it. No, hide that.
I'll beep that out.
Bleep it out. not that. Yeah, but we haven't worked on anything in a while. But don't get us in trouble.
So I'll blur it. It would just be a blur of my hand.
Yeah. Oh, it's fine. Yeah, you see me trying to hide it. No, but that's it's just like you needed the right puckering and it needed to look right in among the next to the furniture. It's the same. Like designers, I think, spend more time like on any set they're designing. Oh, does this wallpaper look right with these drapes, and choosing the colors? Like that's literally the job. Like that's what the art department does. So for us, it was just trying to get it off of something they did in the 80s. And it was a carpet that they had changed a couple, they were replacing it every couple of seasons. So it's like season 6's carpet or season 7's turbo lift. And like, is it going to look like what the fans, what fans remember? And overall, like when you get your cohesive shot, like, is anything going to glare? Or if nobody notices anything, then we did our jobs.
So were there any ever talks about using the design of the Generations bridge rather than season 7's bridge?
Yeah, we talked about it briefly, and I think Terry's mentality was always like he wants to do iconic, and if we're going to do the thing. And if you really look at it into the scope of it, the Generations bridge was on screen for, you're talking minutes. And as opposed to the D bridge from the series, which was years, and is that thing. So, what would it be? So then, again, a lot of what I worked with Terry doing was we would do a twofold thing. What do we want to do, and how do we explain it? And the whole idea, again, our friendly bridge module, that they took the Galaxy class bridge module out of the Enterprise when they didn't remodel the D, they just put a new bridge module in that had the bump outs, and then when they recovered the saucer section, they took the bridge module. Geordie's like, oh, I'm going to go to the place where I dropped it and put it back in, because they would have saved it and it was thing. So that's why we're like, it's the same. It's not just another one. He didn't redo it. It's the same one from before. So again, that was our logic on that, because we saw in Generations the bridge module was pretty trash. There was a giant piece of truss which no one knows where it came from in the middle of the bridge. And
actually, that's a really good point. Yeah, because that doesn't make any sense, because it's almost a window.
I never
he
thought
talks
that
about
either.
like trying to work it in, in an angle that you never saw before. Like, oh, that's where the truss is, but there was nowhere to put it.
We toyed with it, and then also which version, would you restore it to the season 1? And we're like, no, the most iconic was, the season 6, 7 one. So that's really what we aim for.
Got you. So obviously, Andrew, lots of playback graphics, and my favorite scene is when they first walk onto the bridge and everything powers up and all of those panels animate in, which is stunning. How did that how did you go about doing that? Because obviously that's got to be kind of nerve-wracking going, well, we know what it is, we know what it looks like, but we've now got to do it again, but put it on screens rather than being translate.
Yeah. Well, I was about to sort of say like, well, this is again one where I was kind of like, okay, you all got this, right? And that really was the case. Like Okuda provided all of the playback graphics for that, or all of the flat files, right? We provide the animation, but he provided all of the graphics, and he was very, very particular. Obviously, very, very specific about how the shadowing and the brightness would match how the backlighting would be. Those were baked into the graphics to replicate what the backlight would be in front of the translator. What do you call it? Printed transparency on front, right? So all of that was really, really done, outside of my purview. That was sort of provided. So, but since you did bring up the blinking on, that was my work. So thank you for mentioning that. That was the one kind of touch that I got to give it, was the blink on and the blink off. And how, that's really just a matter of like really laboriously like cutting every little thing out, giving it a specific kind of like flicker, like animation, and then offsetting all of those randomly, but randomly, but cascading across across it vertically, horizontally. So but then there were a few story points within that. Like if you recall, towards the very end, Beverly's sort of pointing at a screen, and she's looking for like the life signs within the Borg cube to try to find Jack and Picard. And I remember this was really in the weeds, because even though that was so important and it was so rewarding and a dream come true to be working with Okuda back and forth like that, at the same time there was a lot of storytelling going on in the Titan. Like this was right around the time we were still filming the scenes with Vadic and like doing scanning shots of like the interior of the Titan. So I was very busy with that. But I remember it was actually on a weekend. me and Okuda would I'd send him a version of that scanning screen with Beverly, and he'd give me notes, and he'd give very, very detailed notes. The man writes in paragraphs. and
storytelling time.
And so I forget how many versions we went to on that screen. And you only see it for a bit in the episode, but that's what a lot of this job is, really nailing it, and then you see it for a second. But because you put that time in, it rings true. So that was really rewarding to actually get to really collaborate with them very closely on that.
Yeah. Well, I know we're kind of pushing for time, so we've covered a lot today. From raw grit of the Eleos to the haunting depths of the Shrike, the elegance of the Stargazer, and the vast scale of the Titan, and the emotional gravity of stepping back onto the Enterprise D. When I next see Terrius, I'll be damning him for making me cry again. Every console, every corridor, every light panel tells a story, and thank you to the incredible work of artists like yourselves. These stories don't just live in scripts or actors' performances, they live on walls, in carpets, in LCARS. To Dave, Liz, Andrew, thank you for joining me today. It's been incredible to kind of talk to you and get a sort of a rare look behind the curtain. Your work doesn't just support Star Trek, it defines it. This has been the LCARS Lounge, a Clonestar podcast production dedicated to the creative minds that bring Star Trek to life from the inside out. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share with your fellow Trek builders and dreamers. And remember, the next frontier doesn't need captains, it needs designers, artists, and technicians who dare to ask, what if the future looked like this? We'll see you next time right here in the lounge. Live long and prosper.